I'm going to talk about meditation today. How do you meditate? Well, the way I do it, just sit, usually with my eyes closed, and I relax. The feeling is like taking your clenched fist and gradually opening it so it feels looser and looser and looser. If thoughts come, you pay them no heed because you're not the thoughts. They appear in thoughts appear in what I would say is your perceptual field. And what do you perceive when you're sitting and doing nothing? It's really hard to describe. I look ahead with my eyes closed and there's darkness, but the darkness is permeated by light passing through my eyelids. And what I see is darkness, but it's permeated by a flesh-colored pinkness. What else do I notice when I sit to meditate? Well, right now, I notice a curve in my upper spine that seems uncomfortable. And I try to feel it deeply, let it into my core. That feeling. And when I do that successfully, the irritation evaporates. It doesn't always work that way. For example, when I used to meditate cross-legged, half lotus, full lotus, I would feel pain in my knees, my butt, my quadriceps, but especially my knees, the joints, and my ankles turned upwards. And as I relaxed, I could feel the discomfort getting stronger and stronger as I maintain that still position. But I persisted, knowing at a certain point, my body of its own accord, as long as I left it alone, would accommodate and relax. And when I relaxed, I know that I was still preoccupied with my mind that was always talking to me. I don't know what it would talk about. I forget. It's been so long. But I deliberately set aside the mind and tried to ignore it. Previous to that, I practiced stopping the mind with effort. But the effort to stop the mind created a kind of tension that made my internal world feel sort of muddy. By that, I mean, it didn't feel clear. And I was focused as much on the muddiness as on the rest of my subjective experience. So I ask you who are trying to meditate on what I'm saying, be aware of your mind. Does it have a location? Where's your mind located, Vesselina? Good. You didn't point to your head. All of us, when we meditate, we're likely to take our knowledge with us and locate thinking as being in the brain. But while you're meditating, relaxing into yourself, where does it feel like or seem like that your thinking is taking place? Is it really taking place in your brain? Now I'm looking at you, especially Ian right now. And if I guessed, I would say that the thinking was taking place in his brain. But Ian wouldn't experience it that way. Where would Ian and where do you experience your inner voice emanating from? Is it your head? Likely you find it in your head because you know that thinking supposedly takes place in the brain. So knowing this, you change reality by imagining that the thinking that you experience inside your self is located in your brain, and you look upwards into your brain. But if you don't know that, if you relax your attention enough, try to locate where your thoughts come from and where your sense of being comes from. I, for one, can't locate in my subjective field, where my thoughts are coming from or where they go. It seems to me they're centered somewhat in the heart and gut area. But they could easily, in my closed eyes, originate out of my body off to the left side. Remember, the mind isn't a physical thing. Your experience of your mind within yourself, within your sensory field, your awareness field, could probably be anywhere. Because objectively, although supposedly thinking takes place in the brain, when we experience our own subjectivity, thinking is not so easy to locate. And when we do locate it in our heads, it's probably because we know too much. We know that the actual physical location of thinking must be somewhere in the brain area, head area. Subjectively, we don't experience reality like that. We don't experience our own beingness like that. The inner world is far different from the external world. And it's something you discover in prolonged meditations. And this is very important because while we live in the world as sentient beings with a body, when we internalize in the experience the world with closed eyes, or eyes partially open like you're supposed to do in correct meditation. Supposedly, you're supposed to sit in a half lotus or a lotus with your hands on your lap. And the locus of your mind should be your entire body. Or as a meditation artifice, to locate it in the upward turned palms of your hand, located in the hara or next to the hara in your cupped hands. So, let's say you first sit down to meditate. Are you in a meditation posture? You're sitting in a chair? Are you lying down? Just try to relax your mind. And how do you do that? First of all, as much as possible, you relax your face, your mouth, your neck. Let your jaw hang open if it will, as if you're falling asleep. But don't. Instead, look within. Now, believe it or not, and probably most of you know that, You wonder, how the hell do I look within? Do I look into a mirror so I can look into my eyes? Or do I, in our imagination, turn the visual sense around and try to look inside of us in our own subjectivity? Yes, that's what we try to do. I had the hardest time learning how to do that, but that was 50 years ago, better than 50 years ago. Now, when I meditate, I just sit or lie. And I totally relax as much as possible, especially in an easy chair like this, and lay back and try to feel my whole body as a totality. I may do a quick scan from feeling my feet, my calves, or my blanket is touching my thighs, as well as the bottom of the chair, my buttocks on the chair, my low back cushioned against the back of the chair, my upper back, where there was that irritation in my upper back, in the curve, in the thoracic region. And then I go upwards to my mind area, or the head, where it seems that there's only dark emptiness all over my visual field that's now turned outwards, and all it sees is darkness permeated by seeing through my eyelids. So it's blood tinted, not the red tint that you see when you bleed, but sort of a pinkish or orangish color, light that entirely pervades the darkness that I see with my eyes closed. So my darkness seems to have an alive presence within. I can feel my body from within, or at least it seems that I'm able to feel it from within. I can feel my feet. And it makes a tingle to feel my feet that way. Or at least it used to, but not anymore. I guess I'm pretty used to constantly feeling my body from the inside. So I don't have that tingling sensation anymore when I concentrate on areas of my body, because I'm always aware of the various areas of my body. But where is my mind? Well, I guess I think it should be in my head. So the first place I look in that inner darkness is in the inner darkness around where my eyes are located, my head is, and I can feel my head. I can move it around. And there's all kinds of phenomena that happen when I move my head around. Do you see it too? How the darkness through the eyelids lights up if it's looking at a light source and gets darker if it's turned away. And I move my head up and down. And I see that the darkness is not uniform. It varies almost as much as if I had my eyes open. It's not one constant darkness, but the darkness has a myriad of different tones of orange and dark and light. This is my world if I had no eyes. I look within figuratively. And that's how it feels that I'm a blind, sentient entity that is visually exploring my internal darkness. And I move downwards from my face and feel my neck and sink my awareness deeper. And I begin to feel the totality of my body, holding my attention in my chest and my abdomen. I allow it to spread out to my legs and my arms. And now I feel like I'm aware of the entire body. But subjectively, it appears that I'm looking at my body outline in darkness. What is really happening is I'm feeling my body outline. And the darkness is superimposed by the darkness I see through my closed eyelids. When I realize this, the darkness all over my body appears to have that same light that I find in my head when I close my eyes. Now the question becomes, how do I stop my mind? So now there's a diversion. Instead of just relaxing, trying to forget everything, instead, we look for a location while our eyes are closed for our mind. And if you're like me, you can't find a location. The mind is not an objective phenomenon like your head or your toe. Your mind is everywhere. It's coextensive with your sensual fields, and with your eyes closed, lying down or sitting relaxed, you can locate your body. by scanning. And when you stop scanning, you can feel the totality of your body sensation of being alive. But more than that, you can hear the world around you. And I remember when I was at Mount Baldy, and I was sitting in perfectly balanced meditation where the mind disappears entirely. And an airplane would go overhead. I would experience a phenomena where I seemed to become that airplane, that sound. And it feels like I'm rushing through empty space because that sound has enveloped me entirely. And I identify with it and find myself moving through space. What other things do you see when you meditate? What other things, I should say, do you experience when you meditate? How easy is it for you, if at all possible, to experience your existence without your mind talking to you? Do you think it's possible to experience awareness without being aware of your thinking? Well, you do experience not thinking when you fall asleep. And you can watch yourself fall asleep. The thinking and thoughts and noise in your head seems to gradually subside into your heart and your gut. And then there's a moment or a gap where there's no thinking. And then consciousness begins to contract in you. And you enter the world of sleep and usually lose awareness at that time. But you can learn to remain aware after you fall asleep. And remain quietly aware of your own sleep. But unfortunately, practicing this tends to prevent you from sleeping. Usually it's only years of practice that allows you to gradually watch the mind and consciousness disappear to wherever it goes. In the morning, it's somewhat easier to watch yourself coming awake. First, you're asleep. And if it's near the time that you're coming awake, you'll be dreaming. And in that dream, you might feel yourself moving towards the light. the light that comes through your eyelids, that reddish light that's so familiar. And your head appears to become more aware of a world around you and the empty presence, the space around you where sounds are. And then finally something happens. The consciousness seems to come into your head. And you open your eyes and you can see. But at that first moment when you open your eyes, many times the mind hasn't started working yet. And you have no idea who you are or what you are or where you are. But at some point after a second or two, your whole subjective world falls into place and you know you're awake and where you are, that you're awake. Thus, we begin to learn that the passage between consciousness and unconsciousness is a very complicated process subjectively. Probably objectively, those who have studied it can find all kinds of things that go on with the brain and with the rest of your body. But I'm talking about how we become aware of it, if aware of it at all become. It requires a great deal of patience, years of practice, where you can rest in yourself without a single thought. Or after a while, allowing yourself to think, but paying no attention to the thoughts, the mind at all, and being totally relaxed, even in the middle of a dream filled with airplanes and trains and guns, noise. So where is this subjective world born? Where are our dreams located? Well, normally, as we fall asleep, some of us begin to dream even before we're asleep sometimes. And we can watch the collapse of our conscious world. That we seem to be leaving the conscious world and going into a dark nothingness. And when the dark nothingness closes altogether, consciousness ceases. But with practice, you can learn how to be a little bit aware of yourself in sleep. Not the deep sleep that you go into, but the light sleep. And thus you found a whole new world to play in, the world of your own subjectivity. not as told to you by somebody like Robert or Buddha or some talk show host, but as you actually experience it. This is what meditation is. Experiencing your inner world from your own point of view. When you do that, and you find what's happening in your inner world to be as interesting or more interesting than what's happening in your external world of being awake consciousness, the more you can experience the mystery of the rising and setting of consciousness in you, as well as the world that is revealed by the arising of consciousness within you, and which we all regard as more real than sleep. But in fact, everything we know about the external world is based on our experience and our interpretations through time of what that experience means. A baby, when he first becomes awake, is totally dumbfounded by his experience. Can you imagine yourself coming awake without the mind reminding you of where and who you are? And instead, you pass from the total ignorance of unconsciousness into total awake consciousness, but without the mind that tells you who you are, where you are, and what you are, and all that kind of stuff. It fills in the cracks. But imagine a baby waking up. What does the baby say to himself? Holy shit, what is this? And how many years before that holy shit is replaced by a world of knowing? Is the world of knowing really that important to you? Or is the world of endless space and nothingness just as important? And just as important is what it teaches us, that consciousness is a passing phase. And soon will be gone forever. And that may scare us because since a baby, we've been building worlds of meaning within ourselves. And we know we're going to lose that one day. And we know that because the subjective world we created has that knowledge very securely held as a fear of death. What will we do without our consciousness? What are we without our field of consciousness? For 8 hours a day, We don't exist. And yet we fear not existing for a longer period of time, like forever. To see how highly we value consciousness and the world revealed to us by consciousness and created and filled up with knowledge about different facts and items within our consciousness. The world of our existence, peopled with other sentient entities, humans and pets. And all of that is going to disappear, or so we know. But it's our knowledge which is screwing us up and permeating our entire subjectivity with fear of losing that which we are. And that which we are is the world created by mind. Which is not the world we experience when the mind is silent and we lose all of that knowledge, as we do when we go into sleep. So we learn to consciously go into the nothingness of sleep. And we lose our fear of it. Because we lose ourself every night for a few hours. And when we come alive to the same old Cassie and Ian, Chris and Bernadette and Mark. And we say to ourselves, is this all that there is? Isn't there something more? And through this kind of inquiry, all kinds of things are created, like the idea of heaven and hell, nothingness and somethingness, consciousness and unconsciousness, life and death. And we populate it with myths, with philosophy, and with inner exploration, which reveals to us what the world of nothingness is really like. That's really a world of somethingness, but of not being a human, instead just being an awake, alive entity that's lost its humanhood. And that's what meditation is. To explore our own sentience turned on itself rather than preoccupied with the external world. And what comes from this over time is an increasing measure of peace when you realize your thoughts are not real. They're just thoughts. They're not truth. They're just thoughts. Not unlike a fart is just a visual or a sensation or a smell. happening to us. Thoughts are the same. Tame things that have no reality, but they color our perception of reality. And we only truly perceive reality when our mind shut down and we're conscious without a mind directing our attention and filling us with beliefs that we've held since we're a few years old. We become an empty mind. And empty minds are very peaceful, much to be sought after, a kind of conscious sleep. One thing I've learned over the years is if indeed you're having a hard time to sleep, don't try to force yourself to fall asleep. And instead, just relax. Everything in you seems restless and outwardly focused. And just consciously stay still. And you'll find if you persist, that the agitation will end. And then, if you want, you can go to sleep. It's sleep induced without medication. Instead of medication, you use meditation. Let the mind do what it wants and just ignore it. And instead, focus on relaxing. Constantly feeling like you're letting go of your body and its tensions. And doing this exercise, you'll fall asleep. And at this point, Mark says something. He says, I don't want to appear to be superior or have a transcendental understanding, but what you say, I totally experience in the here and now. So I ask Mark now, what is your experience now when you close your eyes and look for your mind? Where do you find your mind?
Well, my mind seems to move around, but a lot of times it's around my throat and upper chest area, I guess. But it could move around. But when you were asking that earlier, it was like in front of my mouth, somewhere hovering around here. But it's not always there. It moves.
What about you, Eric? Where's your mind this moment? It's not a rhetorical question. I'm asking you.
I don't know. I don't know.
I seem to have broken your camera with that question. You now seem to be lying on your ceiling. There you go.
How's that?
Better. But now you're speaking without your mouth moving. You have us all mystified, Eric. You have a kind of magic of your own where things pause and your mouth doesn't move, but you're talking. It's extraordinary. Ian, where do you experience your mind now?
Good question. I know that I went to sleep for a moment.
Good.
But I have a vision of what came in when you said it was the spots on a leopard. And yeah, whatever that means, I have no idea. But I have a feeling of expanse. No, it's not coming from one place. It's coming from the expanse. Yeah.
Where is your mind within the expanse?
It is the expanse. It doesn't seem to have any location. That's why it's hard to answer that question.
Good.
Yeah.
Vesselina, where is your mind in your subjective field?
In my gut.
You sounded like you're asking a question that you want confirmation from me, whether it's yes or no.
Yeah, I wonder if it's really there.
What?
I wonder if it's really there.
Yeah, so do I. Jay, where do you experience your mind?
Somehow it feels like it's outside me, in the room, watching me to some extent. It could almost go global. It's still split mind. It still seems to look at me for approval, but I just tell it to go, I don't want to use expletives.
Okay, now you split yourself into two things, your mind and you who is telling it what to do. Where's the one that's telling it? Where's that located?
I think I'm the one that's telling it, but I have no answer. And what I'm telling it is sufficient. So I simply let it go. I try not. The more I try to articulate it, the more ridiculous it sounds. It absolutely just simply goes away from me. It's like my brain is leaking out of my ears, and even that I have to ask, is that the right answer? I don't know.
Nicola, where is your mind?
You're asking a mind, where's the mind? Only logical thing that I can say is that at the moment I experience myself behind my eyes, but that's just.
Well, that's your homework, all of you. To be aware of where your mind is located throughout the day and falling into sleep and waking up in the morning. Where is my mind located? And what does it matter But this is something you look into when you practice meditation, because you know you're not supposed to be thinking during meditation. But how the hell do you stop thinking? One way is to grab hold of your mind like you were outside of it and just holding it still, like you're imaginatively holding your brain from leaking into the environment. Another way is to be able to do absolutely nothing with your mind and to just let it go. And you let it go so thoroughly that you can't find your mind anymore. And you can't even remember that you're supposed to be looking for your mind. And then you're asleep. This is part of meditation, is to explore your subjectivity, especially in the time of awakening and going to sleep. And watch what happens to consciousness. How does consciousness come in the morning? How does it disappear in sleep? And I'll tell you, don't think about this too hard and long, because otherwise it'll have a hard time going to sleep. And you may never wake up because your mind is so wrapped up into figuring out what the mind is doing that your head will blow off. Except for Chris, who has no mind. And Bernadette, who's catching that from Chris. There's only one person, two people that have not moved throughout the entire satsang. One is Michael, who pretends to be asleep. And the other is Egamon, who appears to be dead. And Maxie and Eddie, who don't appear at all. Try exploring your subjectivity this way, rather than not knowing what to do with when you practice meditation. Play with it. Sit trying to do nothing and see that you're exerting force to try to do nothing. And instead, relax your jaw, relax your eyes, relax everything in your head, and feel like you're opening, like you're opening, like you're opening. And soon you can learn how to do that with your whole body until you're open with nothing going on inside except a relaxed emptiness. And just rest in that relaxed emptiness with no more to do. You don't have to locate the mind. You don't have to do anything. And that's meditation, is to be open-handed with your mind grasping onto nothing. Don't hold on to thoughts. Don't hold on to sensations. Don't hold on to an attitude of being aware of the self from inside. Just let go altogether. There's a shadow moving in Veselina's room. Is it the shadow of life and death? Or one of your parents?
It's the cat.
The cat.
He's hungry.
He has a very big shadow. Even this kind of thing is something to be aware of. Without thinking, just be aware of everything. Even when you're sitting in a chair in the evening, ignore what the television set is saying. Let your mind free to wander, free to feel itself, free to feel your body in its totality. And therefore, supposedly the last words Robert spoke from his deathbed, while he was conscious at least. Freedom. 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 Just let go. Let go of your mind. Let go of consciousness or unconsciousness. Just be free. I love you all. Let's just go now without continuing satsang in a new direction after I go. Just be where you are right now and stay there for a long time. And if you start going to sleep, allow it, but watch it. And then stop watching it and let go. Play that way, watching, letting go, watching, let it go. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.